Good afternoon, everyone. This is Winter. I'm joined by Aegis, and today we are covering a bit um, darker of a topic than we would usually cover. We've decided we want to join in with the Bell Let's Talk um, global effort to bring suicide and depression awareness to the front and remove the taboo of the topic. Today, we want to try to help. We want to discuss these topics in an open manner. We may bring up some examples from our own lives, but obviously, we won't get too specific. And first of all, we want to cover off if you are having any thoughts like this, suicidal, depression, if you need help, the Canada Suicide Hotline is 1-8333, or sorry, 1-833-456-4566. And the United States Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. Again, if you are having thoughts, if you know anyone who's having these thoughts, please find the resources. They're available online, they're available over the phone. Seek out help. Your life is worth it. Okay, now that we've done the introduction, we want to talk today about Indestructible, which is an album by Disturbed that deals with a lot of mental health issues that you see people struggle with internally, and they don't go get help, even when they're aware that it's causing them severe mental stress. Later in the week, we are also going to discuss We Are Not Your Kind by Slipknot, that deals with depression in some ways similar to this album, but in my opinion, that album brings with it a lot more hope. Aegis, did you have anything you want to say before we started off?
Uh, not really. I mean, aside from the dark aspects, I loved this album when I was growing up. Uh, Disturbed used to be one of my favorite bands. I used to love them. Rock band and guitar hero. I used to love playing their songs on guitar. Some of my favorite songs, but them are actually on this album. So, I'm excited to dissect part of this album today with you.
Yeah, and I'm excited to go through it with you. Now, of course, we're going to go off on a few tangents because some of these songs are clearly written from the state of mind of someone who might be having these problems, or it's meant to encapsulate these issues. And we do want to discuss the negative impact of having these types of mentalities enter your mind and possible ways to begin to work out of those mentalities. So the first song starts very powerfully. It's called Indestructible. It's the opening and title track of the album. The way I heard this song, the very first time I heard it as part of the album, was that this is the facade that's put up throughout the album of a lot of people who have mental health issues. You don't show the outside world, you don't show other people the problems you're having, and therefore you come off sometimes as aggressive, you come off as territorial, defensive, and unwilling to back down in situations. Now, I know the song is literally about soldiers and it's meant to be an inspiration song about picking yourself up. And I appreciate that. I just think that in the greater context of the album, I think it presents someone who's put up a wall. Aegis, what did you think of the song?
Yeah, like you said, on the front, it's pretty basic. It's about the troops. It came out in 2008, so a lot was going on with the Iraq War and in Afghanistan. So right on the surface, it's about the troops. You go a little deeper, it's about the band. The band came out at a time where they were kind of forking their own genre in new metal or help just like define it more. They were together for a long time and they're still together, and they've gone through a lot of struggles navigating the music industry and growing as a band and probably collectively as a family. And just their indestructibility, being able to overcome a lot of struggles, is part of what I think defines this title track as well. In addition to what you're saying about, the indestructible facade that we put on ourselves for society to see so we don't appear as weak.
Right. And I don't necessarily think that putting up a strong front, at least in things like professional situations, is necessarily a bad idea. I think that everyone, when they're in formal settings and settings where you need to get something done, it is a situation where you can't just bring every one of your life problems into a situation. However, I think where something like this song, or in my opinion, the point of this song, fails is some people put up this state of aggression and defensiveness permanently, and they don't let anyone in. And I think that that's possibly part of the point of this entire album is eventually you have to let someone see your weak side or your hurt side or your broken side, and you need to let someone in to help you, because it's not okay to keep everything bottled up even if you manage to mask it day to day. Some of the most famous suicides were people who no one had any idea they had a problem. What do you think of that, Aegis?
I mean, it's pretty clear. Like you look at Robin Williams. I mean, he would probably occasionally joke about things like that, but you would never really take it as a serious thing because he was a comedian, and a lot of the time he did seem pretty happy. Even Heath Ledger, I don't know the details behind his suicide, but uh, it kind of blindsided me when I was a kid that this guy who was this prolific actor just portrayed Joker in such an astounding and award-winning way. It's almost unpredictable. And I also agree that if you're in a professional setting, you can't bear all your grievances and all your baggage and air your dirty laundry out for everybody to see. You need to kind of be professional and present yourself accordingly. But as you'll see later on in the album and hear us discuss, if you do present this frontal exterior of aggression and being angry, it'll very likely define who you are as a person for a long period of time and almost make you a monster.
Agreed. And I want to say up front that if you are someone who can't necessarily easily open up even to the people you care about and the people you respect because you're afraid of what they'll think of you, first of all, that's very unlikely to be true. If someone's going to judge you for having issues, for having flaws, for having depression in general, they're not really someone that you should have in your life. Um, but if you really can't bring yourself to talk to people you know about because of embarrassment, there's always the option to seek out therapy or, again, a hotline. There are resources in place, and talking to someone who knows what they're talking about is always a good option. And it's a good fallback for if you really can't bring yourself to talk to anyone who's in your life, at least in my opinion. Again, we are not professionals on this topic, and we want everyone to be aware of that. Aegis, do you have anything else to say before we move on to the second song?
Yeah, I do. Just a quick side. People very likely, and I guess I can kind of speak from a little bit of experience. You present this uh, stronger exterior. Maybe you're an angry front more often because maybe you're tired of trying, and there's times where you reach out to people that you like love and respect for their guidance and help, and not a lot changes in your personal life to better, and so you become a little more jaded and angrier at that kind of thing, and it's kind of molding you into somebody that maybe you don't want to be, and that's really tough because if you're trying to better and you're not getting better, it's probably really frustrating.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I would say that this is something we'll probably circle back to later in the conversation because there's other songs that deal with this directly. But there's nothing wrong with putting aside a bit of your naivety. There's nothing wrong with putting aside the too easy to trust, too easy to have faith in someone's side of you, but you can't let it become something that you just don't trust anyone or you don't ever trust a situation. There has to be a limit to that growing up and maturing and understanding that not necessarily everyone has the best desires for you or good intentions when they deal with you. That's part of growing up, but expecting that no one has good intentions for you and no one has that desire to help you, it's going too far. And again, that there's stuff later in this album that we'll talk about more directly on that topic. Aegis, are you ready to move on to Inside the Fire?
Yes, sir. Let's go on.
Okay, now I know you just looked up the background of this song, the formal background. I know that you knew what the song was about, so I'm going to let you start this off since you know quite a bit about the song.
Yeah. So basically, I find a lot of their songs to be very like the title gives a really good description of what the song is going to be about, and the album kind of dictates the overarching theme of the songs that are in the album. So, in an interview, David Draymond actually said this is one of their darkest songs they've ever recorded, and you read the lyrics and listen to the song, and it actually is pretty rough. It's pretty astounding. The history behind the song, for its inspiration, is David Draymond, when he was a teenager, he dated a girl, and she was heavy into drugs, and it led to him also becoming involved in drugs. And she committed suicide due to probably things associated with the drug usage and such. And he was left feeling very guilty and largely at fault for what happened, even though he may or may not have been, he was stuck with that guilt. And the song kind of weaves a similar story where the girlfriend in the song commits suicide. And what I take from it is the boyfriend, he is left in a similar state that David was when he found out that his girlfriend committed suicide. And uh, as Winter's going to discuss, you know, David Draymond was very religious, came from a religious family, and the devil is on the boyfriend's shoulders in the song, and he's trying to coax the boyfriend into committing suicide to rejoin his girlfriend because he's so lost without her. But there's also that kind of guilty feeling of this religious side where if he kills himself, it's frowned down upon by not only, society and religion, but he will go to hell.
Right, and I think that's a pretty good summary of the entire song. We want to remind anyone who may be listening to this, this is a dark album, and We Are Not Your Kind will also be a dark album. If you are having trouble listening to the content, we encourage you to turn this off and seek out help. This song is a good example of why we're saying that with a serious note. The song opens with the line, Devin won't go to heaven. And that's because of, as Aegis said, David Draymond's Jewish background. His grandfather, I believe, was very high up in the church. And therefore, when his girlfriend committed suicide in real life, he was not only left with his guilt and his sadness and his depression about what happened, he also had to mentally struggle with the thought that the woman he cared about had been sent to hell for her actions. And I think that's one of the difficulties with dealing with suicide prevention, and it's likely part of the reason why the church came up with this concept that if you commit suicide you'll go to hell. It's the intention to discourage someone from killing themselves, but the issue with it is it makes suicidal thoughts sound evil. And frankly, that might make people scared to come out and talk to someone about it if they feel like these thoughts are taboo or even that they're uncommon. Um, I know a lot of people who I would have never thought that when I spoke to told me they had considered suicide at least once in their life. Now, how serious that thought was is one thing or another, but I feel like this song addresses that taboo. And like Aegis said, it then goes into the topics of having depression due to loss and grief and not knowing how to move on. And it's a difficult thing to talk about, but I want to remind people that if you lose a loved one through illness, through injury, through suicide, it's very unlikely that they would want you to end your life as well. If there is a heaven and if there is an afterlife, you will have eternity with them once your life ends naturally. I am certain that most people's lovers would not, or friends or family, anyone would want them to shorten their life in order to quicken their time to getting to the afterlife. It's okay to believe in this stuff, but just remember that at the end of the day, if you believe in eternity, eternity is forever. Living out the rest of your life and trying to enjoy it is at maximum going to be 80, 90 years. The answer is never to kill yourself to get back to your loved ones. Live your life, remember them, talk fondly about them, and make sure that their existence carries on in the world. Aegis, what do you think about that?
Yeah, agreed. I think there's also just this taboo of society to even like bring up that kind of subject because it's I think a lot of times it's still frowned down upon, even though we're becoming better at being more accepting and open to hearing people's struggles. It's still kind of like hush hush, like we don't talk about that, even though some people, a lot of people actually do go through it. It's kind of fucked up.
Right. And that's why I can appreciate this song. Because when you look at the lead singer of this band, he's probably one of the most masculine, tough, somewhat scary looking guys you could ever see. And I respect the fact that he's willing to address that he had these issues in his life. It's breaking down, look, I put up this front. I revoked my faith. I did all these things to affront my faith. But at the end of the day, I had this mental crisis that really, really impacted my life. I respect the fact that he brought this forward and he talked about it in song because it reaches out to everyone who heard it and says, You're not the only one who's experienced this grief through loss." Do you have anything else you wanted to add on this song, or did we want to move on to Deceiver?
Oh, just in general, being what 16 years old when this album came out, uh, I didn't really hear any of the lyrics. I would listen to the song and jam out to the guitar, but being an adult and going back and reading the lyrics, they're pretty dark, man. This album is pretty. It's speaking a lot of dark tones. It's kind of makes you really think about yourself and be introspective.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that introspectivity. I mean, I promise, and to anyone who's hearing this, the thoughts in your head, everyone has those kind of thoughts at some point. Thoughts are thoughts. You have 24 hours a day for your entire life. They're going to happen. It's about learning how to deal with them in a way that helps you get through it and carry on. Okay, I think we should talk about the next song, and I actually want to start this off, if you don't mind, Aegis.
Have at her. You go ahead, yeah.
Okay, okay. So this song is called Deceiver, and this is one of the only songs on the album that I have some personal difficulty with its message. I believe the song is overall talking about specifically a girlfriend, just because I woke up to you leaving me now is one of the lyrics. However, I think the general point of this song is having people betray you, fail you in your life, and that causing you to become an angry person, um, who doesn't trust other people and who wants to seek revenge on those who failed you. Now, again, tying back to the reasoning behind what I think is the intention of this album, it makes sense. This is the outward anger being shown at other people and what they've done to you in order to cover up your own internal agony. There's lines like an evil entity had taken hold of me, ripped out my heart, and started to feed. I still remember when I thought all you were eating was my pride. Now, we've all been in relationships and situations like this where you find out someone in your life isn't the person you thought they were. And in some cases, especially in relationships, their actual intentions can really hurt you, especially if you find out they're using you. If you find out that they didn't quite give you that full frontal, here's what I want out of you discussion. And I get that. I get that point of this song, and I get that the song isn't necessarily saying having this mentality is a good thing. But I would also like to posit that my concern is when you hear a song like this, it's saying other people hurt you, other people drive you to be that darker, tougher person, but it's also taking it out on them. And you never know what that other person is dealing with themselves. You never know what fully drove them to do what they did. You never even know fully if they intended to have the impact on you that they had. And to do something like what this song suggests, which is basically not go to literal war with them, but it sounds like it's basically saying you're going to try to tear down their life, is you may be effectively becoming the bad person that you're accusing them of in this song. You might drive them to depression. You might drive them to feeling awful about themselves. And I don't think that is a positive end result of dealing with depression. Aegis, what do you think?
I can just speak briefly to this. So, uh, deceiver, like I'm sure we've all been lied to at some point in our lives, especially people by maybe we loved in previous relationships. Uh, I think when you boil it down, the man or the woman in this song that's been lied to really is just so awestruck and just so astounded that somebody they trusted and loved could deceive them in such a way. And like you said, it's almost going towards like a tit for tat kind of thing. Like you did this to me, well, I'm gonna go to a metaphorical war with you. And uh, I don't think that's the best way to go about your problems, but in the moment, that's where it's very emotionally driven. It sure as hell feels that that's the best thing to do and the most warranted thing to do, especially in the moment.
Right. And there will be a song later on this album that deals with the mental health issues that come for things that you do in the moment. And unfortunately, this is going to be a two-part video, so these two songs will not be tied together on this video. But that is one other thing to remember is when you take on this vengeful, aggressive persona, once you mentally recover and once you've moved past the situation, you may have regrets from what you've done for the rest of your life. And that can be mentally damaging as well. Sometimes it's better to cut someone out, remove them from your life if necessary. But I do believe in the practice of if you're not going to forgive someone, trying to move past them. And now, of course, in criminal situations and things like that, sometimes that's just not possible and it's not what should be done. But I don't think letting your hate for someone build up and overflow and become who you are is the best option. Um, if you need to have your peace, again, in not extreme situations, yeah, it's okay to go to someone and say, you failed me, or you let me down, or you betrayed me. It hurt me. It might help them learn how to not do that in the future. But you don't need to go gossip to everybody. You don't need to try to tear down their life, even if you think it's a good idea. Because again, you never know what that other person is going through. And you don't want to find out that your actions cause someone to commit suicide or to slip into depression. I can guarantee you that in most cases, no matter how much you hate someone, you will regret that if you find out that you caused it. Aegis, is there anything else you wanted to say about Deceiver?
Uh, Not really. It's already been said, honestly. Like, I mean, I think it's always harder to be the bigger person in a situation, and if you're being deceived by somebody that you're trying to trust for a long time, I think the easiest thing is if you can't trust them, then if you're in a relationship with someone like that, it's probably best for the both of you to end that relationship, as hard as that may be.
And to just step away. I agree with you.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I've kind of said all I can say about this song. This is one of the only songs on the whole album I don't necessarily support, even though, again, I think it has its place. So I'm okay to move on to the night if you are.
Oh man, I can't wait to talk about my favorite song on this album.
Okay, well, I also know me and you have varying opinions on what this song is about, so I'll let you kick it off.
Oh man. Okay, so picture this 16-year-old me. I'm gonna do like a brief discussion and get all excited about the song. But 16 years old, in the middle of just trying to get really good at guitar, I hear this song and I hear Dan Dunnigan, the lead guitarist for this band, just let out his best solo that I think he's ever done with Disturbed. And holy shit, it just rocked my socks. You have an amazing solo that is really it's achievable for like a mid-level guitarist. It's got a catchy chorus, and the song itself is actually fairly catchy and just it's got a good beat to it. Uh, what I interpret as this song is it almost feels like that David and the band are describing the night as almost a living being or a force that can almost envelop you and almost like a darkness, and if you let it take over you, it'll kind of warp you into some kind of twisted being. Uh, a different kind of interpretation that I also had on the side is that it's about facing your internal darkness, your internal night, and by moving past it and accepting your flaws, what I think is you can probably achieve some level of salvation. And this is kind of represented in the lyric at the start of it, in the middle of the chorus. Are you going to remain a slave for the rest of your life? I think a slave is kind of referring to like your inner demons or the wrongs you've done with the flaws you have in your character. And if you accept them, then it kind of ushers you into you being a better person as a result. What do you think?
I think that's a fair interpretation, and I think your secondary statement is closer to what I perceive this song to be. I have a thing for picking out lines that sound like they're staring into the abyss in songs. I'm not quite sure why, but the first line I picked up in the song was when he said "stare into the night," which I immediately interpreted as "stare into the abyss." And then I also picked up the line about saving me from all they've taken. I see this song as someone caving into their dark side. And as you said, I do think the point of the song is that there's strength in sometimes presenting that darker, less white knight side of you. There are some situations where trying to just be the good guy doesn't work. But I think the problem with this, and I don't know if this song means to present it or if it does, is if you give into your dark side and you effectively give up on things like hope, if you give up on things like love in order to get stronger and shield yourself from the world, you're effectively taking the things away from yourself that you were afraid of losing in the first place. And that's kind of what I see in the song is when I listen to it, I hear someone say, I've become stronger, I've become tougher, I've become better because I let my dark side take over and come out. It's become the perfect shield for me. And again, I can see some parts of growing up and putting up certain amounts of walls where there need to be walls. But I also encourage people that there's a reason why there's two sides to you. I'm not going to go down the route of there's two bears in you, but I actually think it's a very good analogy. If you let yourself give into the darkness, eventually that's all you're going to see.
Question:
If you,
what kind of bear
yes,
is best? False, black
well,
bear.
well, yeah, and the two bears analogy, it comes from the First Nations. It's basically saying that you have two bears inside you. One represents good and hope. The other represents fear, things like hate, basically all the negatives. Whichever one you feed will eventually become bigger, and it will take you over. This song ties into that, in my opinion. And again, there's a level of balance. Having some of that darkness in you, some of that lack of naivety about the world is a good thing. It can protect you from bad situations. But having only that can leave you in a very bad spot mentally. And it can leave you not trusting anyone. It can leave you not letting anyone in. And that doesn't help at the end of the day. What do you think of that?
I think that's just the genius of music because I interpreted the song in two different ways. One which I think was a bit different than yours, one where it was kind of similar to yours, but I think we're both getting at similar themes where, if you let this like rigid exterior define you for too long, it's going to make you into somebody like the other bear, like you were saying.
Absolutely. Okay, so I agree with you. This is one of the best songs on the album. It's not my favorite song on the album, but I do think the point it makes. I have certainly been this person in my life where I've gotten to a situation where I had to throw up every wall possible in order to mentally protect myself. And while it had the desired effect of getting me through a situation, it also left me in a very dark place for a very long time. So, in my opinion, I would caution against letting yourself totally fall into something like this.
And sometimes the walls are just easier to put up and it's easier to be alone sometimes, but it's better if you're not. Better for your headspace, better for your mentality,
It's always better to let someone in, is kind of what we're saying.
especially if it's a pizza man.
Yeah, always let in the pizza man. He's always bringing goodness. Okay, let's move on to Perfect Insanity. Since you took the last one, I'll take the beginning of this. I do think this is a similar concept to the last song. It's letting your anger and frustration take over. But I also think it brings on this discussion that comes up later in the album about being vilified or made to be the bad guy or being made to feel like your thoughts and opinions make you crazy. I know it has a lot of lines that are about that. Basically saying, actually, let me pull up, if I can pull up the lyrics real quick, I will quote a few lyrics. Give me just a second, guys. So I have the lyrics in front of me now. And the first thing that comes on in this song, and the reason why I think it's about what I think it's about, is it starts off very similar to Down with the Sickness. It starts off with almost like a wah, which I think is meant to be a callback. The sickness is very much about someone giving into their hate. Um, so this song, it has comments like, I do believe you made your message clear. I think I'm losing my mind. I'm branded like an animal. In other words, people have branded you as the bad guy. They branded you as insane. And sometimes it's easier to just fall into the role that people have assigned to you than it is to try to get out of it and try to prove them wrong. But there's part of the point is if you don't actually believe you're that person, or even if you're starting to believe it, sometimes taking the easy route is not the best route. Do you really want to become, or even in some cases, do you really want to stay the bad person or the person who has no logical sense, like people accuse, or do you want to pull yourself out of that? And I feel like this song is the opposite. It's someone falling into accepting what people say about them and accepting what people think of them. What do you think about that, Aegis?
I think this kind of ties into maybe mob mentality because, like, there's the chance that the guy in the song with the girl is insane and has psychotic tendencies. Uh, like, you don't get branded like an animal for no reason. So there's probably something underneath there that happened to make them be at least seen somewhat by society like they are insane and a monster, somewhat or nuts. But the mob mentality is like if someone starts chanting that insane bit, then more will start to catch on, and then it's going to be just a complete usherance of the crowd. Like they're going to completely utter the same subject. And even if you aren't crazy, you're going to feel so isolated because everybody's against you that maybe eventually you're going to become the villain. Maybe you don't want to be the villain, but society is making you feel as though you're going down that path without a choice. It's kind of tired to be
Yep.
stronger outside for the entire duration if everybody's against you too, right?
Yeah, and the song brings up isolation. There's a line that says, deprivating, isolating all that I feel, leaving me with images that I know are not real, are those words of condemnation that I hear. So it's exactly what you just said. It's constantly hearing other people say that there's something wrong with you. And it it deprives you of your happiness, it deprives you of your pride, and it isolates you. And that can leave you with, I don't know if images I know are not real is meant to be literal, you're seeing things. I think it's meant to be saying you're seeing a side of yourself that you simply accept because society or someone specific is forcing it on you. They're making you feel like the bad guy, or in this case, making you feel like you're crazy. um,
Also,
I would
like
say,
I think I'm losing my mind. Like he's losing his mind. Like there's probably a point in this song where he wasn't crazy or psychotic or insane, and as the song progresses, he's becoming crazier as a result of outside influence.
yeah, and that's probably right. And I just want to say to anyone who's been vilified or made to feel like they have something wrong with them in general, no two people are the same. Things that you enjoy, things that make you happy, even things that anger you are not going to be the same as everybody else. And if the people who are in your life can't accept those parts of you, again, it might be better to find new people than to embrace what they're saying. Now, of course, if you have real issues, meaning severe anger problems, severe aggression problems, it may be time to seek out help, because in those scenarios you are putting other people at risk or even yourself. But when it comes down to simply your opinion on topics, when it comes down to what you enjoy, like I know some people, get told that they're touched in the head if they listen to metal music, things like that. As long as it's safe and it's legal, you enjoying something that someone else enjoys, or you disagreeing with another person's opinion, again, to the extent of it being safe and legal, it's okay. And it's okay to be different from someone else. It doesn't make you insane or touched in the head or any other phrasing that people might use. And if you have PTSD, if you have anger issues that result from situations you've been in, someone else not understanding that doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. Now if they approach you and they're trying to make you go get help, or they're trying to help you, that's a different thing than this song presents. This song very much presents a scenario where someone's basically just, in my opinion, yelling at you, telling you're a bad person, constantly digging into your head and hurting you. That's different than someone approaching you and trying to help you when you have genuine problems. So just remember that. One, listen to what someone's saying and understand if they're trying to help versus they're just trying to hurt you. And two, balance. Is this actually something serious about myself that I should address, or is this just something that this person has a particular problem with? They're different things. Aegis, are you ready to move on to the last song of this section?
Something I'm just going to touch on there right quick. It's always easy for people, but I find that sometimes I'm guilty of this myself, that a lot of times that I'm listening so I can follow up to what you're saying. But I need to be better at actually listening to people's like issues and problems, or just generally listening to them and being there in the moment. It's always easy just to, try and continue the conversation, but sometimes it's probably better to read between the lines. And if somebody's going through struggles, it's like, hey, instead of yammering on like I do, I should listen to this person and just hear them out. And sometimes not saying anything says a lot.
Absolutely. And it's give and take, Aegis. I think I need to backtrack what I'm saying a little bit. I want to make it very clear that if someone's trying to help and it's something that really is a problem, such as aggression, such as an unwillingness to change a very negative mental state, those are scenarios where you should listen to someone. I'm talking about the petty stuff that is just someone picking at you or telling you you're not good enough or you don't like the right things, is more the variance I'm trying to put out there. And again, this song does tie into the potential that maybe someone has tried to tell another person that they have mental health issues and the other person basically just said, well, you're crazy. I mean, there is that side of it, right? You try to open up to someone and it backfires on you. Now, again, I would say if that happens, you should seek out somebody else. Or if you feel like you have no one else that you can talk to about that stuff and they'll take it seriously or they'll try to help you, find other resources like a therapist or contact the hotlines we provided or other hotlines. I know we're in North America, but there is always a resource for someone to listen to you, who will not call you crazy, who will not address you in a negative way. There are people on this planet, there are many of them, that will listen to you to help you, not to drag you down and not to scoff at what your problems are. And I say problems, it's a poor word to choose, but I think everyone knows what I'm saying. I'm sure when I'm not trying to say problem like you have a problem. I'm saying problems as in difficulties in your life, difficulties in your mental state. Okay, we are running out of time for this section, and I'm hoping we can move on to discuss Haunted because it's my favorite song on this album.
Okay, you can bring us in.
All right, so we're good to move on. So I think this song has two sides to it. The first is that I'm going to call it the protagonist, but basically the speaker is talking to someone and saying, I feel what you feel. I feel hurt. I feel broken. I feel cast aside. I feel pushed down by society. I feel pushed down by the elite. But at the same time, this person is saying, in the in the part of the song is uh, another sacrifice to a tormentor your world wouldn't understand. So even though this person is talking to someone else, clearly they're also saying you can't understand me. And that's a common difficulty with people who are suffering mental health issues is they want to talk to somebody else. And I've been in this scenario myself where I want to talk to someone else about the things I feel and the problems I have. But then when they try to help me and talk to me about their own issues, I kind of want to throw it aside and say, well, you're not experiencing what I'm experiencing, and what I'm experiencing is worse. And while I can understand, like you said, Aegis, sometimes the best idea is not to counter what someone's saying with your own story. Um, I do think part of it is knowing someone else can feel that way and someone else has felt that way can help. And that's what I hear when I hear this song is I hear the person talking about a lot of things I felt in my own life. And I think it provides a good mirror into you're not the only person who feels like they were damaged by their life experiences, who feels like they've sacrificed something because of their own life experiences. And there is a part of this song that I almost want to recite word for word. It says, "My blood is cold as ice, or so I have been told. Show no emotion, and it can destroy your soul. It's another sacrifice to a tormentor your world wouldn't understand, so turn away again." And then later, it says, "You're frightened, so am I. A world of demons wait, watching our movements and filling my heart with hate. You're burning, so will I, when I awake to discover how I've been ravaged by your world." So these are very dark lyrics, but what they're basically saying is, you know, I have emotions, I feel emotions, I'm very hurt, I'm very tormented, but I've been told my outward exterior is cold and I don't care about other people. That's how I take the part about my blood is cold as ice, because that usually defines that you don't care about other people. But he makes a very good point in the lyric, it can destroy your soul. When that's all you portray yourself as, you drive people away. Eventually, you accept that that is you, and it will damage you. And I think the end point of this song is eventually you're going to wake up and realize I am a completely different person than I was. And it's not a good thing. I've let all the bads in the world, all the things that damaged me, make me part of the problem. Aegis, what do you think of that?
I actually think we see it from a similar perspective. So I'm gonna walk you guys through what I think. So picture this. I see the song kind of discussing the relationship between a couple, with one of them trying to leave the other one for a number of reasons. The person leaving, I think, sees himself as a monster who's done too much wrong and has caused too much pain in their past. And the person, they finally found someone that loves them, but they really can't understand why because they see themselves as such a flawed person, a flawed character, wrong and bad and evil, and they don't think they're deserving of that love. And the whole song, they're trying to push them away, and the person that loves them is like the guy who says I'm broken. Well, the girl says so am I, and the guy retorts by saying I'm better off alone. He's trying to push the person away, which could be possibly for their own safety if they believe they've done too much wrong that they might hurt them. Uh, the choruses, I think, are telling us that the loving person to walk away and to leave the other person behind. Uh, just generally the title of the album, Haunted. They're very likely haunted by their past and all the things they've done or have been made to believe they are responsible for doing.
Yep, I think that that's a good way to interpret this. And I'm actually looking at the lyrics while you're speaking, and I can see it the way you're saying it. Um, so I guess maybe the overarching theme of this song, either way, is letting the past define you and it causing problems in your current life. I think we can agree on that, can't we, Aegis?
Yes, sir, I agree.
So I think. that might be a good way to come to the end of this video. I know you have to leave. A large point of the album, in my opinion, in Indestructible is if you become the monster or if you become the callous person, someday you may regret it. Just remember when you're struggling mentally, there are positive ways to grow and work your way out of it. And there are also ways that are going to leave you in a worse mental state than before. And some of those ways are the quickest and easiest way to do something, like revenge, like hating everybody, like not trusting anyone. Those things can eventually leave you in a worse place than you are. It's better to try to look at the world in a more positive light. It's better to speak to someone. It's better to try to help yourself. It's better to try to find new things to do. It's better to cut out the people from your life that you need to cut out than it is to let yourself become a bitter and hateful person. Eventually, it will work out better for you to have that mentality. Aegis, do you agree with that?
100%. Like Winter just said, getting help is never a bad thing. Even if you think you're doing well, talking to somebody is never a bad thing because, you know, it's always good to talk to somebody who's even like a neutral third party. Uh, if you're going through dark times, it's easy to kind of shrug off looking for help and like calling hotlines and reaching out to therapists, and it's easy to shrug it off as, oh, it's not for me, or the wait list is too long, yada yada yada. If the wait list is 6 months or a year, you might be in the exact same place in a year's time, if not worse. And if your dark thoughts take hold of you, they could be even more awful. So try and do what you can.
And try to trust the people around you. Accept that most people in your life, especially if they've been in your life for a long time, do want the best for you, and they will not judge you anywhere near as much as you think they will if you open up and you talk, and it will
Exactly.
make you feel better. Okay, we do have to end it for today. Again, we hope this is helpful to have people hear us talk about this. We hope that we're covering this topic in a sensitive and understanding manner. And with that, we will see you in part two. Everybody, have a good evening.
Later, everybody.